Welcome to the Nerd Party.
It's not working.
How long since you've cleaned the heads?
The what?
The heads. Do you have any alcohol?
To drink?
What? No, to clean it. Check the tracking.
The rental place closes in 2 hours.
Shut up. It's working.
Time for a RetroPerspective.
A special series here with myself and Matt Hansen. You Can't Kill the Boogeyman, a retrospective looking at the history of the Halloween franchise. As I said, it's me and Matt Hansen. Matt, how you doing?
I'm good. I am so excited to do this project. Just a little behind-the-scenes info. John and I have been talking about this all summer, pretty much since the new Halloween 2018 trailer dropped, and part of the reason we're doing that is because John and I are fans of the series, and this is intended to be a countdown.
Yes, this is a countdown, and it's also an examination, as many people will discover, of a deep and abiding love for a series that nevertheless has its warts, and we still find what to love about it. But at the same time, we're going to be very honest when there's a misstep and when there isn't. Of course, we're here on the Nerd Party. You can go to thenerdparty.com/contact, look up Filibuster, look up any show on the network, and you can drop a line. You can find the Nerd Party on Twitter @JoinNerdParty. And on Facebook and Instagram, just look for The Nerd Party, and there you are. Use the tag Filibuster, and you can let us know your own Halloween thoughts and memories. So, we are doing this series is going to extend into other shows on the network. And we, as a special treat, we are going to be appearing over on Missing Frames, with Sean Eastridge, because he's never seen Halloween 2, so he's going to see the sequel, and he's going to see Halloween 2, and then he can do an honest evaluation of comparing them and contrasting them. But today's focus, of course, is going to be on the first film of the series, Halloween, released in 1978, directed by John Carpenter, shot by Dean Cundey, and Matt, I can't imagine anybody listening to this has not seen Halloween. But if you were put in a situation where you had to give an elevator pitch, non-spoiler, to get somebody to see Halloween, what would it be?
Simple, pure suspense.
I like it. Very, very accurate, actually, because that was Carpenter's intent with this film, was to make something that was essentially an homage to Hitchcock and other films of that like that he loved. He even named one of the characters Sam Loomis, which is a reference to Psycho.
And another one, Tommy Doyle, who was Jimmy Stewart's friend in Rear Window.
Yes.
That was the name of that character.
That's right. So there's a lot of in a sense, I think in the 1970s, you see a lot of filmmakers who are steeped in film lore and have a deep love of film, paying tribute to that which they loved. Spielberg comes up during this time. Lucas comes up during this time. Scorsese comes up during this time. And De Palma, and all of these names get thrown out there regularly when they talk about the 1970s film revolution. And quietly over here, a name that's not necessarily on the tip of the most tongues is John Carpenter. And here's this little masterpiece hiding over there that is essentially the same thing as what a Star Wars is.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I mean, obviously as a horror fan, you say John Carpenter, and I feel like I should be like on my hands and knees. Because I seriously, like, he may be the first director that I became a fan of. Maybe him and Hitchcock, but like, he was one where after I saw Halloween, I had to see his other films, especially the ones that he came out in the same era. So, I mean, right after Halloween, I think I saw The Fog and Escape from New York and The Thing and all of his like early '80s stuff, because I was so taken away with his style of filmmaking.
Yeah, and he definitely found his niche, and you can see him. There is a certain signature with the themes that he deals with.
Themes in the sense of like story themes, but also like the other reason I became a fan of him is because he scores all of his own music. And I tell this, if there's a person that I could get to score my life, it would be John Carpenter.
Wow. I don't know if I go down that road, because I'd like to think my life is a little less thrilling than that.
No, but at least it would have some like badass synths and like a rockin' track. And
that's a good okay, I could see some Duke of New York theme working there.
Yeah,
that would work.
Exactly.
I'm down with that. Or the Snake Shake. But when you come back to Halloween and you re-examine it, I mean, we've both seen this film God knows how many times by this point. Been fans since we were, young bucks, roaming free out there.
No, just a humble brag. I could probably do the entire film's dialogue if we were sitting down to watch it.
Yeah, and that's what's so amazing about it is its rewatchability. I think is the original Halloween sticks with everybody who sees it. The first time they see it, it is an oh wow moment, and it's amazing to me that it still manages to find that hook. And I always question, although obviously I think it deserves it, but I always wind up questioning when I rewatch it. Is this just nostalgia talking to me? It is so easy nowadays to find yourself in that trap of I'm rewatching this, but I have to admit that maybe it's not that great. I honestly can't. This is one of those ones where I look back and I say, it doesn't matter what era this is being watched. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess the only things that you could like point at are like some of the teenage dialogue is hokey, but teenage dialogue is hokey no matter what era it's in. This one that just happens to be in the 70s, so it's more that focused. I'm sure in 20 years, Clueless is going to be viewed in the same way.
Yeah,
in terms of its dialogue. So, but really, when it comes to the atmosphere and the suspense, because I mean, yes, Halloween is a horror film, but above all, I think it's a horror suspense film, and that part still holds up.
It does. And I think that also you see Halloween come to prominence in a time where people are first coming to grips with the idea of serial killers, like actually coming to grips with that concept. And so it definitely finds a great niche there. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure, as any other horror fan, you've seen Scream by Kevin Williamson.
Yes.
And I always go back to Halloween as my big refutation point for the rules that they cite, because they specifically say you can't do drugs. Yet Laurie smokes weed right here as they're driving up to the sheriff of the town.
Now, admittedly, she smokes weed uncomfortably, whereas the other two just down it like it's nothing. But you're right, she does smoke it.
Yeah, and so I've always used that as my wedge issue with the rules as they laid them out. But in a sense, Halloween does establish the rules because you get so many knockoffs afterward. And what is it you think that they never... I mean, an imitation is always an imitation and therefore sort of a shade removed. But what is it that you think really sets Halloween apart? Why has nobody ever been able to truly imitate this film and get the same vibe from it? It's like this alchemy of why has nobody ever quite figured out the recipe to this?
I really do think it's because it's hard to put a finger on, but for me, it's because this film, when you watch it now, it's not gimmicky in the slightest. A lot of what came after Halloween had some kind of gimmick to it, whether it was like a supernatural bent, and even the Halloween sequels to a certain extent had that too. Whether it's gory, whether it's supposed to be viewed more as kind of like a you gotta be kidding sort of thing or joke. This one is just a story about some babysitters who were stalked by this person who has escaped from an insane asylum. There's no comedy. There's no like ribbing about it. There's no sort of mythos that's put into it. That comes later in the sequels.
Yes.
But just for this one, it's that simple premise, and there's not even like, the other thing too is that people may not realize, or people who haven't seen Halloween may have this idea that this is like lumped in with some of the other horror movies of the time where it's a gore fest. This original movie, you see maybe like 2 or 3 shots of blood in the whole thing. And like I said, I think the reason for that is because they wrote effective characters and they made them not gimmicky. They're to a certain extent, they play archetypes, but they don't play, like, if it makes sense, like caricatures of those archetypes.
Yeah.
They do feel like real people.
I think you also hit on a very important point, too, that this first one, because all the other mythology gets added from Halloween 2 forward, this first one is exactly the way that real life works with, especially with a psycho killer. It doesn't make sense. You can't ascribe any sort of sensible motivation to it. Like, the most prominent knockoff, obviously, is Friday the 13th. And even though Mrs. Voorhees is obviously off her rocker and doing these awful things that are just absolutely unreasonably terrible, they still try to give her this somewhat almost like Batman-y sort of thing of like, I lost my family and so I'm traumatized sort of thing. And it's like,
Well, and the same thing kind of applies to someone like Freddy Krueger, who's going after the kids because the parents burned him up. Now, he was a bad person in real life,
yes.
But, I mean, he's still taking his revenge for a wrong.
But, tied into it absolutely is the fact that, especially if you look at Freddy Krueger, he becomes almost an anti-hero figure.
Yeah, and the later sequels for sure, yeah.
But even in the first one, they mention why he was set on fire, but he still gets these gag lines that get uncomfortable laughs from the audience. And it's kind of horrifying when you think about it. Like, there's absolutely no attempt in Halloween to sympathize with the killer. So I think you're really onto something, that is what sets this film apart so much, is there is no effort to try to say, well, maybe if you just understand him. No, there's no understanding this.
That comes later with Rob Zombie, which we'll get to.
Yes. Will we get to that?
But no, they dehumanize him as much as possible to where his own psychiatrist doesn't think of him as a person.
Right.
I mean, and he's not even credited as Michael Myers in the credits. Longtime fans will know he's credited as the Shape.
Now here's a question for you though, because we're talking about what works and everything. If you can throw yourself back, first time you're watching this, what's the scene that grabbed you? Was it from the beginning, or was it you were into it and then there was one moment where it just turned and you said, this is the move, like, wow, and you just were stuck from that moment forward?
I mean, I do think Halloween, the original Halloween, has one of the best opening sequences of any horror movie that I can think of. But I will say that I was into it from the beginning, and watching this, because I watched it for the first time when I was 14 years old, and that would have put me at 2003. I already knew who Jamie Lee Curtis was because I had obviously seen her in other films. And so I was watching it, enjoying seeing where she got her start off, and we'll get into it later. I think she's a big reason why this film really works for me. But what really pushed this film over the edge and just not only made me love it, but as I mentioned on the Missing Frames episode, it made me want to seek out how this film was made. And this was the first movie that gave me the appreciation of the art of filmmaking. And it's a scene that I actually used on Twitter for when they did those like #OnePerfectShots sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's the scene where Laurie, after discovering her friend's body, is backed up against the closet, and the closet's dark, and the face comes up from with the lighting from Dean Cundy, and just that shot alone made me elevate this from like an excellent movie to like, this is art. This is artful.
I think you're absolutely right. That shot still horrifies me. The entire rest of the film, there's even a very famous rewatch that I did in the past, which was post Children, where I was watching it with the missus, and I very famously, and I'm still razzed about this by one of my friends, I actually got angry at the end of the movie because she left the kids to go check on her friends. I was like, screw that. Just call the cops. If your friends are in trouble, it's their own damn fault. And, so like I got really mad that she abandoned her post, as it were. But even then, that shot of him coming out from the shadows, I mean, I'm afraid of dark doorways for the rest of I saw it for the first time when I was 10. I'm afraid of dark doorways for the rest of my life. After that
like, even watching it, I watched the end of it today because I was rewatching the film in anticipation of this, and I don't know how many times I've seen this film. I couldn't even count, but every time that scene gives me chills. It never fails every time I see it.
Yes, and I would say, though, that the moment where it really first grabbed me was I was in it. Like, I agree, the opening's fantastic. But then when it goes to the Smith's Grove sanitarium and they're having Donald Pleasance and he's talking about it, not a person. I've known him longer than everybody. So why are you transferring him? Because the court says I have to. Right. And you see him just completely at the end of his rope. When they turn the corner and the lights show all of the patients walking around in their robes in the rain. Yeah. That moment, I think, probably glued me to my seat, and I wasn't moving after that because it was hard. And then when he jumps up on the back of the car, and to get to a name that you mentioned, Dean Cundey, I think that Dean Cundey gets overlooked, or used to be overlooked a lot, in favor of talking about John Carpenter. And I think that's another piece of the alchemy is without Cundey's visual sense, this film does not work as well. It is not as thrilling.
This whole film, I really do think, having read about it and having studied so much of it, it really was a labor of love and a team effort, which is what encourages me so much about this new film, because I'm getting those vibes, at least from the press material that they released. I mean, I did hear that Jamie Lee Curtis for this new one is only getting paid about $14,000, which, I mean, she's a big star now, and she really didn't need to come back for this. In fact, she said she was done with the series a while ago. So the fact that A, she's willing to come back for this, and B, for essentially scale, she got paid for H2O. She's emphasized that she's not getting paid for this. Really makes me excited, and think that they're again doing what this film does, and it's a real effort on the part of everybody.
Yeah. And it is, I think, also a very big deal to get a blessing from the original creator of the series. It's very easy to go down a rabbit hole and insist that only things blessed by the original creator of a series are therefore valid. However, I do think that does carry a significant air, because therefore, that it's at least going to be in vision with what made you fall in love with it in the first place. Yeah,
not only blessed by, but he's like, I'll also come back and do the score.
Which is amazing.
I'm so excited for that.
And I think that's part of it too, is that so many movies use a very conscious manipulation of emotion with their music, and this is manipulative in its reduction, in its simplicity. It's so straightforward and so non-complex that I think it adds a whole layer about Michael.
Oh my God. I will say, I can't remember if Halloween was the film that got me into filmmaking. I do know for a fact that the Halloween soundtrack was the first soundtrack I actively sought out and bought at Barnes & Noble when they were still like big into selling music.
Yeah.
Like I as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to have that soundtrack. And even Carpenter credits the soundtrack more than anything. He said that he had shown it to an executive, I think from Fox, without the soundtrack, and it didn't work. And then as soon as he put the music in, he showed it to the same person and it worked. Like, I think the music is a big character, especially in this first one.
Yeah, that theme, I had friends who would wait for Halloween time, and we'd go somewhere, be like late or something like that, and we're driving back. Because, I lived in the suburbs / exurbs, and we'd be driving along in our little country bumpkin roads, and it's real dark outside. And then they would turn on the Halloween music, and I was like, turn that S off right now. I will not get out of your car. You are not doing this to me. And people could so easily just screw with me with the music. And that is such... It's so... I mean, even the music, when, just when they're just walking along, it's not even the stalking music. The stalking music's great, but just that eerie music while Laurie's walking along.
Laurie's theme.
Yeah.
I remember specifically that Halloween, the first Halloween that after I saw the movie for the first time, I had gotten the soundtrack by that point. And I remember getting off the bus coming from high school, walking down my street to where my house is, and playing that theme as I was walking, just because I wanted to set the mood for the rest of the evening.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's something I wonder, because I live in a very warm climate now, and I think you do as well.
Yes.
And there's a part of me that makes me wonder if the music and the film, of course, but the music itself makes me long for the fall in a very special way. And living in a warm climate, it's not quite the same, because that music belongs with leaves blowing across the street and, old elm trees and kids running around trick-or-treating with coats on and stuff like that. And it's disorienting to have that experience, and it's, like 80 degrees outside at night sort of thing.
And plus a lot of it goes along with darkness outside, which, at least for me in October, it still doesn't get dark until like 7:30.
Yeah, I'm a little bit closer to the equator right now, and than I have been before, and it's still disorienting how late the sun sets. It's like, no, stop it, it's fall, go down. But I think to be fair, we've seen the movie hundreds of times, and I think even with revisiting, say, a movie as classic as Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, there are still cracks that show over time. So as a film fan, as a film buff, what are any moments or story beats or anything that you look at now with a little bit of detachment, and the opportunity to be immersed in the work? Is there anything where you can see the seams and you're like, I bet they wish they had that back, or that could have been edited together better, or anything like that?
As far as the filmmaking goes, God, that's a hard one. I guess the obvious one that I see every time is that at the beginning, when Michael Myers is breaking out of the insane asylum and he smashes the window, you can see the wrench in his hand.
Yes. But you can always headcanon that and say, well, he needed it, and so
given that they build him up as this, non-human figure, I'm willing to bet the point was he's so inhuman he could just smash through glass with his hand.
Yeah.
But they obviously needed to have something in his hand to break it. Same thing. They're just little things. Like, same thing with the glass that Laurie breaks at the end. You could obviously see it's a different pane than all the other glass in that door. But again, it's just one of those things where, like,
right.
It's very hard for me to find technical faults with this movie. Now, like, story faults, I could say, like, well, the fact that Michael Myers can drive, even though they touch upon that in the film in a very amusing way, I think.
Yeah.
Or the fact that here's this girl screaming down the street and nobody, like, one person turns on the lights to see who it is and still doesn't bother to help her.
Well, you got to imagine, is that a commentary? Because I remember...
That might be.
I remember growing up and being told, even if somebody tells you they need help, just tell them you're going to call the cops. Now, again, that gets back to the area I grew up in. Like it was a known tactic for somebody to say they had a car accident. Can you please let me in? And it was obviously
a robbery.
Yeah, it was obviously not true. But I always take that as a just a statement of people's distance and unwillingness to help each other. But I gotta imagine somebody, even if they didn't believe she was in danger, would have
But
called.
no one was curious?
Well, I would have imagined, even if you're a grumpy old man like me at this point, I'm calling the cops and be like, "There's some idiot kid running down the street. I want you to go scare him and get over here and scare them right now." And so there's that aspect to it. I think story cracks wise, I know that I have to sort of consciously forget the fact that there are some inconsistencies with the order of events with certain things, but not so much that it takes me out. Like I have to sit there and really think about it and be like, well, could that really happen? And so I don't really worry about it. In terms of the driving thing, I agree with you. They at least acknowledge it, though. How could he possibly drive? Well, he was doing a perfectly fine job last
Maybe
night.
someone around here gave him lessons. And
Yeah.
I mean, it makes me laugh, so I just kind of forgive it. But if you really stop to think about it, how did this guy who was imprisoned when he was 6 learn how to drive?
Right. So, well, that could have been, something, I guess, that you could say that Halloween 666, the curse of Michael Myers, stands to address in its own clumsy sorts of ways.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
We will get there.
When I talk about the lack of mythology, I'm specifically talking about the lack of Thorn.
Yeah, in terms of like anything technical, I think the only thing that I think is an offshoot of the time where monitors were different and playback and stuff like that is the fact that I know there's one shot, and I have to consciously force myself not to pay attention to it, but John Carpenter's cigarette smoke drifts into frame.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know what, though? I didn't even notice it was there until I listened to a commentary and John Carpenter pointed it out. Now I can't unsee it. But,
Right.
I mean, it was just one of those things where, like, I heard that was there, but it took John Carpenter on the commentary pointing it out to me to see it.
Yes, and it's also it's a lot like in Return of the Jedi. There was a matte error, not a Matt Hansen error, but a matting error with the effects. When the TIE fighter attack first breaks and the Falcon flies through the cloud of TIE fighters, and you see from the cockpit they go through the cloud of TIE fighters, and then it cuts to a different shot and the Falcon roars over the camera and you see all of the ships in the background. There was a compositing error where there were these TIE fighters that were in the background and then their mats were cut out and you could see their white outlines in front of the Falcon. So
Yeah.
like it just got composited in the wrong order. I went my whole life without seeing it until the 1990s when somebody pointed it out. And I was like, I don't really see it. And then they paused the tape and pointed it out to me. And to this day, even though they fixed it in the special editions, my eyes keep going to that corner of the screen. And that's like the cigarette smoke where it's like, I hate that I know that.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird things where, like, obviously that doesn't take us out of the film, but like I would have never noticed it.
Yeah,
Could have gone with the rest of my life without noticing it, but yeah, now that I do know it, I always look for it in that shot.
Yeah. Now, speaking of something that I don't think they ever really adequately followed up on is when Michael has his mask torn off at the end. There's something wrong with his eye, and they
Yes.
never go into any detail about that. What do you think happened to his eye?
Oh no, they go into detail about that. Laurie stabs him with the hanger.
No. He has a it's not bleeding and it's not a cut. There's like a deformity on his left eye.
Yeah, I took it that she did some that was from the. I always took that as that was from when she pokes him with the hanger.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
See, I never took it as pokes him with the hanger. I took
Because
it as there was some
because
sort
when-
of congenital
Because
thing.
it's on the same eye where she leans up with the hammer and he covers that part of his face. So it's the same eye. So that's what it always led me to think.
Well, I mean, that would make sense. I guess I just didn't. I guess because I didn't see any blood, which gets to your point about how this isn't extremely gory. The effect doesn't play as an injury to me. I always saw it as it's almost like an expectation to see a deformity when the killer is unmasked. Something that we see carried forward with Jason.
Well, actually, I mean, when they cast it, because the guy who's unmasked as Michael at the end is not the guy who was the Shape in the rest of the film.
Right.
But he was casted specifically for that shot because Carpenter said he wanted someone that looked angelic. And I don't think that you would make that casting choice and then say, by the way, let's give him a deformity. I really do think that was intended to be that's the result of the hanger.
I accept that. All these years I've been sitting there trying to figure out what happened to him. And because I didn't see blood, I never took it as an injury. But that makes sense.
If this movie were shot today, you would probably see him with his eye partially gouged out. But because they were trying to go for the simplicity, I always took it as that what that was. And I don't know if you know this, but there were some people who, when the new teaser poster for the new film came out, where it's just the mask of Michael Myers looking down and worn, someone enhanced the image and lightened it up, and Michael still has something wrong with his eye. From that,
no kidding. I did not know that. That's amazing that they went to that level of detail. I have to really commend that.
At least from the enhancement. Now, it could be that people are seeing things that are just not there, but I looked at the photo that they enhanced, and yeah, it does look like he's still got that scar from his eye from when Laurie got him.
Well, it'll be interesting to me to see, because there's so much made about the fact that he relies on the mask and the unmasking that she manages, at the end of the film, stops him dead in his tracks.
Right.
I am legitimately curious with this new one coming out whether they maintain we're not going to show you his face aspect to it.
I'm sure they do. Well, I mean, they might have saved it, but I noticed, at least when the trailer came out, they made a very conscious choice of not showing us anything but the back of him.
Yes, they did. So I think you're right. But to that end, though, I mean, I'm loving having the conversation, and I always love revisiting this film. Why do you think that it is that nobody feels that everything has been said that needs to be said about this? Because there are films where, we talk about them and then it sort of hits a point where you're like, okay, I'm kind of, can we move on, sort of thing. This conversation endures, though. Do you see that as new generations of fans coming to it, or is it simply the old school fans just love it that much?
I think it's a combination of both. I think that really what I'm really happy about this new Halloween film coming out is that as soon as the trailer dropped, it kind of seemed like people's interest in the original especially started to spike. I started to see a lot more fans, quote-unquote fans, new fans, old fans, coming out of the woodwork talking about how much they loved the old movie and how much they're looking forward to this new one because it reminds them of it. But I don't know. I just think it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's such a simple movie, and yet it never gets old to me. Like I could write a book probably about how much I enjoy this film, but it's not something that you can articulate with words. It's just something that keeps on giving, whether that be the way it was made, the music, the cinematography. We haven't really talked about the cast, but the cast is what really helps sell this for me and sets it apart from a lot of its knockoffs, because, I mean, there's a reason that Jamie Lee Curtis is the Scream Queen, but really there's a reason why she's kind of like the OG final girl, is because I don't think there's ever been a quote-unquote final girl that's as well-rounded and as likable as Laurie Strode, at least for me.
No, I think that's true. I think that's very true. And I think it is something that Curtis brings to the role, is a maturity that Laurie needs to set her apart from her peers,
but also vulnerability.
Right. Yes. But I find her maturity to be probably the thing that is... It's a different tactic than I think you would find nowadays, because nowadays when they go to set the quote-unquote outcast character, the person who isn't as cool as their friends, they're always dorky, nerdy.
Gimmicky.
Yes. Whereas Laurie is set apart because she's more mature than her friends. She's got more of a sense of responsibility, and
she just happens to be also kind of shy.
Yeah. Yeah.
At least around like around certain subjects, but when you see her with Tommy and with the kids, she's doing just fine. She's almost like a mother figure. She's interacting with them well. She's taking good care of them, keeping them entertained. So she's not like a complete spaz and can't talk to anybody sort of person.
Right. It's not a never been kissed sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because you actually get the sense with Laurie that is, I guess, what makes her such an effective heroine is something that resonates, I think, with so many of us. And you look at so many of the different hero and heroine types, they're always the ones that have the ability to see the world for the responsibility that it demands of them. And I like the fact that you call out how she has sort of a motherly air about her already.
To the point where, like you said, you had gotten frustrated when we watched the film and she left the kids to go see what happened to her friends. But, I mean, she is a character who, even when she's being chased by this man, she could run down the street and be safe, but she makes the conscious choice to go back and get the kids. I mean...
That's true. And she does, she goes back and she makes sure that they are safe.
If she really wanted to, she could just run down the street. Because she's out of the house at that point.
That's true. That's very true. Wow. And the thing is that talking about going back to the house, this film does act as a time capsule, I think, in a very large way.
Yeah.
Of harkening back, well, not just no cell phones, but front doors unlocked, windows left open at night. I mean, do you think that this movie winds up setting the precedent that later... I mean, I could not imagine leaving my front door unlocked intentionally for God knows how long.
I noticed for the first time when I was watching it today, chalk this up to like a film that still makes me notice things. When Bob gets Linda out of the truck, he doesn't close the truck door before he goes into the house.
Right. Right.
I never saw that before, but I'm like, that dude just left his car door open.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, and it's such a... what it reminds me of is I remember talking with a friend who was, I forget what he was studying in college or whatever, but there was apparently I don't know if he was really a serial killer or a spree killer or what have you, but I remember him telling me that the guy's MO was he would just walk around whatever part of town he was in, whether it was an apartment building or whether it was a house or whatever, and he would just try the front door. If it was unlocked, he went in and he killed. If it was locked, he moved on.
See, again, and I think that's why when you ask me why this movie works so well, it's because, and really until the end, where, Michael disappears after being shot 6 times, all this is real life believable.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what makes it frightening. Like, you could actually, like you said, there's a person who just, will kill you just because your door happens to be unlocked. And in this film, he just happens to go after Laurie because he saw her dropping off the key. We don't know about the sister thing yet, but that's,
Well, and her friend, maybe
yelled at
don't
him.
Yeah, maybe don't yell at somebody who's driving by in a car. Maybe take a note of the license plate and tell the cop about it, like...
By the way, talk about a moment that did send chills up my spine the first time I saw it, when she says speed kills and then he stops the car and then you don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And he just drives off.
Funny side note about that car is I happen to know the model is the Ford LTD station wagon from the late 70s. And the reason I know that is because I had a friend who had one.
My parents had the '80s model when I was a very, very little kid, but yeah, it was an LTD.
Yeah, but my friend had one. We called it the War Wagon because it was indestructible. He literally spun it 180 degrees on the ice one time, took out a street sign, removed his fender, hammered out the dent, and put the fender back on. And I remember one time watching it. It was the first time revisiting it, after he had the car and everything, and we saw it, and we were like, oh, my God, he's unstoppable. Do you see the car that he has? And so nowadays when I watch the movie, I still get a chuckle out of that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I honestly, I don't know how he got to Haddonfield because those things got like 10 miles a gallon. So how many times did he fill up, and did he have the mask every time? So
well, no, obviously he didn't have the mask because he doesn't get the mask until he breaks into the store that her dad is investigating. Right. So theoretically, he's doing the whole drive to Haddonfield unmasked.
But I guess he stole all the cash from the from the guy.
From the garage guy.
Yeah,
that's how you can explain it. Is like the guy that he killed his jumpsuit. He also happened to take his wallet.
And you know what? That whole reveal of the murder of the garage guy and how he gets the jumpsuit is so magnificently well done because it's such a measure of restraint and also paying off something that the audience doesn't know why they're shown that book of matches earlier. Right. And you sort of forget about it, and then you see it, and I think that Carpenter does a really good job of letting the audience feel like they figured something out.
Well, you know what that does too is like he does that again when there's the scene early on where Loomis discovers that Judith Meyer's gravestone is missing, and then you don't hear about it for the rest of the movie, and then at the very end when she's discovering the bodies, there's Annie laying and there's the gravestone.
Yes.
Sitting there.
Yeah, which is that, oh, geez, that shot, I think, is undoubtedly something that scarred the hell out of me. And it's in such quick succession before, the shot we talked about before about him being revealed in the lighting coming out from the dark room.
You watch the first time and it's like, what the hell did he take the grave thing for? And then you see it.
And
it's if you were paying attention, then it pays off.
Yeah, boy, does it pay off. Oh my gosh, does it pay off? And the thing is, what's great is there are even moments of lightness and humor that aren't hokey the way movies are now, especially horror movies. And you had mentioned that earlier. One of the scenes that I absolutely adore in this film is when the kids come up and they're daring each other to go up to the Myers house.
That makes me laugh every single time.
Hey, you kids! Like it's
hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. And it is. I don't know. It's really. I think just such a gem of a film. Like it's one of those things where when you go back and you revisit a film like this, you don't want to give it. I know that my impulse is I want to find any reason not to give it a perfect rating because people just chalk it up as, oh, that's nostalgia. I have to give this a perfect rating, though.
Yes.
And would you see any reason why somebody would watch this film and walk away from it and be like, yeah, okay?
Well, I could see that, like, from a modern perspective, that, it's a horror movie, but it's pretty tame. It's kind of, old-fashioned. I mean, I guess you could say that it's really the killing doesn't happen until we're more than halfway through the film. The killing of the main characters.
Yeah.
So people could say that, I guess, the pacing's slow, but I don't know. First of all, I grew up with films from the 70s, so, like, I'm used to that kind of suspense building. But I have to, for me, this is the perfect horror movie. This is my favorite horror movie, and I would even go as far as to say maybe my favorite movie of all time.
It's definitely in the conversation. It is definitely, if you remember Desert Island Discs?
Yeah.
This is on the list.
Yeah,
for sure.
If
If you're going to strand me somewhere, I got to have this movie with me.
Me too.
Yeah. And it's even interesting because you mentioned the films of the 70s and, we talked about other horror stuff. It is such a measure of incredible restraint because Texas Chainsaw Massacre had already happened. Right. And you look at the completely different approach of both of those films, both great in their own right. But it would be such a fascinating double feature, I think, to
Texas Chainsaw has like this air of exploitativeness to it.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is much more restrained and I don't know, man. Like I get that impulse of always wanting to temper your love for something just to like not overdo it, but I'm physically incapable of doing that for this film. I'm unapologetic about how much I love it. Will always love it. And like I said, it really got me into the art and the decisions that go behind filmmaking because, as fans well know, they only made this movie for $325,000 over the course of 20 days.
Amazing.
And what they were able to do with such limited resources and the end product, I will never stop being amazed. Ever.
Yeah. You know what? I think that is a great note to leave it out on and let everybody know that this is just the first in the series here on Filibuster. And if everybody wants to get in touch with you, Matt, and chat about their own love for The Shape, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter at mhansen0207 HANSEN. Going to be talking so much more Halloween stuff as we count down to this new film.
Absolutely. And you can find me out there. I am Kessel Junkie out there on Twitter. And you can find me here on the network right now regularly on Aggressive Negotiations with Matt Rushing. So with all of that said, lock your doors.